For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. I'm Nitin Gokhale. Last week, our sister concern Bharat Shakti.in hosted a India Defence Conclave, our annual marquee event, getting together different stakeholders in the Indian defence sector and of course foreign defence attaches posted in India as the core audience. There were participants and speakers from foreign OEMs, Indian defence companies, MSMEs and officials from the Indian Defence Ministry. I had an occasion to interview India's Army Chief General Manoj Pande during the conference. Our evening program, The Gist, is based on that interaction. Take a look.
So let me begin straight away, General Pande, by asking you, almost 16 rounds after the negotiations, the recent friction points between India and China have now seen or witnessed disengagement. So what after this? What are we looking at and what is China looking at? What are the next steps on the border to reduce tension between the two countries?
Right. Thank you, Nitin. While we have made progress in terms of disengagement from friction points that you just mentioned, we still have two friction points where we need to move forward, and that we are hopeful as we move forward by talking both through the military and the diplomatic level. I'm sure we'll be able to find a resolution towards these two friction points. So that is our immediate aim, to disengage from these friction points before we look at the next step of perhaps de-escalation, which will involve pullback of troops and flights.
Yeah, so almost, if you can take it close, yeah. Almost 2.5 years we are going to complete of the tension on the Ladakh border. But that notwithstanding, India has sort of mirrored the deployment over these past 26, 27 months and has managed to sort of stop the aggression by China. Having achieved the disengagement, like you said, de-escalation is the next step perhaps after the friction points are taken care of. But what lessons so far have you imbibed or taken from the standoff that happened in Ladakh? And how would you implement those lessons going forward?
Right. So if I were to mention a couple of issues, and the first and the foremost would be to maintain a high level of operational preparedness at all times,
right,
whatever be the situation. Second, what also adequately came about is the importance of infrastructure development, especially along our northern borders. And when I mention about northern borders, I'm also referring to the area opposite Arunachal Pradesh or the eastern sector besides Ladakh.
Right.
We also realize that there is adequate scope for infusion of new technology, and that is something which we need to leverage to enhance our ability to address challenges in the future. Fourthly, what also came out is that we also need to develop our grey zone capabilities. We need to have a strategy to be able to effectively operate in the grey zone, as well as build our capabilities in terms of what you require to operate in the grey zone.
Countering the grey zone tactics
Absolutely.
of the adversity.
Yes.
Adversary.
And the last one, in terms of our ability to mobilize troops, and that relates to the first point which I mentioned, that we need to maintain very high levels of operational preparedness at times. So these were, I feel, some of the key issues that we...
And you're working towards improving all of them, I'm sure.
Yes. So infrastructure is the first one which I mentioned. Now let me tell you, in the last 2 years, since May of 2020, a significant amount of enhancement in our infrastructure has taken place. especially in the context of Eastern Ladakh. In the last 2 years, we were able to create habitat for almost close to 35,000 of our troops in the form of 350 odd company modules, if you like. So that is something which we created. We also, you are aware, we had to induct our mechanized elements as well as additional artillery guns. So we created covered accommodation, covered garages for almost 450 odd tanks and hay vehicles, as well as about 350 artillery systems. So these were some of the, I would say, landmark achievements in a short span of 2 years that we were able to achieve this.
In fact, I remember going to exactly 1 year ago to Eastern Arunachal Pradesh. You were that time the Eastern Army commander. And before that, 1 year before that to Ladakh. I think the logistics chain and the logistics effort of the Indian Army also really stood the test of time or rose to the occasion. So how are you going to take it further? Like you mentioned habitat, you mentioned the garages and the bases, forward bases. But logistics, of course, sustains the army. In that respect, what are the steps that you have taken?
Right. So one of the key issues that we are looking at is the forward road connectivity, because that would remain the mainstay of our ability to push in, we say, logistics as well as mobilize troops.
Right.
Now that is something which we are focusing on, and especially in the context of our eastern region, where the infrastructure, there's lots to be desired to be done. So we are focusing on creating our infrastructure, road connectivity right up to the border. B, have valley connectivity.
Right, in Arunachal Pradesh,
that is as important. Also bearing in mind the fact that most of these valleys have a single road axis leading up to the forward areas. So you also need to have alternate road axis or alternate road connectivity should the main one get disrupted for some reason. And the fourth aspect here is also the bridges. So there is a requirement to upgrade these bridges so that we are able to carry heavy load carriers and for logistics on these areas. So this was the road infrastructure, but equally important we realized was to develop and build our aviation infrastructure in forward areas.
For airlift and induction, faster
airlift,
induction.
both. I would say the strategic airlift for which you need larger runways.
Right.
But also equally important is the tactical airlift, wherein you need helipads in forward areas so that you are able to then quickly move in additional soldiers, additional troops in the areas that you require to make them available. So that's another area that we are focusing on. Third issue was also the force protection. To be able to protect ourselves, protect our assets against artillery fires, etc. So therein we have gone in a major way to have underground storage infrastructure, both for ammunition and certain other logistics elements. So these are the 3-4 issues. But I must also mention the tremendous support that we got from the Air Force, especially in the context of what happened in Eastern Ladakh.
Yes.
In a very short time, we were able to induct additional troops, heavy equipment, which I thought was very remarkable.
It was, in fact, it was a great synergized effort when we look back really. Moving away from the immediate implementation of infrastructure development and otherwise, you mentioned grey zone challenges. So in that respect, 5G, then big data, cyber, all that comes into picture, because future war, we don't know which way it is going to go. Once we talked about last year, we spoke about what happened in Armenia and Azerbaijan. And from now we are talking about the land war in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia. So we can't really predict which way war is going. But yet, what is the progress as far as induction of 5G, the big data, cyber, and those technologies, the future technologies as far as Indian Army is concerned? If you can throw some light on that.
So you correctly pointed out, in fact, leveraging the niche technologies is towards our capability development, I would say, has been one of the key pillars of our capability development program. And towards this, I will just highlight a few issues.
Sure.
And let me start by,
Sure.
what we are doing in the field of artificial intelligence. And I'll just name 3-4 projects which we have, I would say, made fairly good headway. First, of course, is in terms of interpretation of satellite imageries. So that is the detection of objects, identification and comparison of satellite imageries, which we get in large numbers. So that is one of the areas that we have looked at. Second is to be able to sort of consolidate all the surveillance, reconnaissance and intelligence inputs. And as you are aware, we have a large number of these sensors. You have ground-based sensors, you have the aerial sensors. So to fuse them together so that you have a common intelligence picture is another area where we are banking heavily on the artificial intelligence.
Right.
In the context of what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir, we are also utilizing artificial intelligence for detecting suspicious vehicles. Now this we have hooked on to the database of the local regional transport organization, so that any alien vehicle, any foreign vehicle or any sort of strange vehicle you are easily able to pick up. Now these are some of the projects which I must say have made very good headway. Another area in terms of niche technology is the quantum key distribution, and I'm sure some of your audience is aware. Recently, as part of the IDEX projects, we were able to achieve about 119 kilometers in a single hop in the area of Ladakh.
That's quite a
Yes,
long
so that
distance,
was,
yeah.
I would say, a significant step,
Right.
and we are now building on it. So that was the second area. In terms of unmanned ground vehicles, again, I think it was towards the end of the last year that we had, in one of our field firing ranges, we had almost 11 firms come up with about 27 solutions, and this is what we are again taking forward, either in terms of for detection of mines or for logistic drones and the likes. So these were the 2-3 niche technologies.
And all of these technologies are coming from Indian companies?
Of
Indigenous solutions?
Yes, and large number of them have been part of the Innovation in Defense Excellence Initiative,
Right.
of which I am sure in the earlier sessions
Yes,
you would have
we just
spoken
had
about.
in fact we had a previous session, but this is good to know because that is going to be the future technology. If Indian solution is available, that also means that if Indian Army inducts it after testing, and which is quite stringent, Indian Army's testing, then our friends, the foreign friends who are here, who are foreign defense attaches and advisors, I'm sure they will also look for that technology for their own armed forces if that is successful,
Absolutely, and I must admit here, and in fact, I'm happy to say that our startup ecosystem have stepped up in a major way, and I think there's tremendous potential as we move forward and go ahead.
See, there is this feeling, or there is a perception, if I may say so, that the Indian Army soldier is not as technologically savvy as his counterpart in the Navy or the Air Force. But going by what you are now inducting and what you are implementing on the ground in terms of AI, machine learning, modern ISR technology, have you improved or increased the threshold of technology absorption of the Indian soldier in the past few years, you would say?
Yes. So there are two things, and I must mention here, as part of the new human resource management scheme, Agnipath scheme,
Right.
where you're looking at recruiting, youth soldiers who are ITI qualified.
Right.
So that is something which will, I feel prove beneficial, because you will then have technologically adept youth coming into the army.
Right.
So that will help a great deal. But besides that, we are also conscious that this technology, be it operating drones, your counter-drone systems, these even infantry soldier in the future will have to operate. Right. So we have taken a number of measures in terms of carrying out this basic training as part of the training curriculum in our regimental centers at the recruit stage, and subsequently in the units as well.
Right.
So that has been our constantly endeavor to make sure that the technological threshold of an average soldier is certainly
Good. And in that respect, you can take help of a lot of, as I think the Shekatkar committee reported, recommended, simulation, machine learning, all that when the recruits come in. And because now the training period of the Agniveers is going to be shorter than your normal earlier training period. So in that respect, are Indian companies, Indian solutions coming to your aid in terms of improving or modernizing the training schedule or the training curriculum?
Yes, you rightly said, and one of the key issues in terms of implementing the Agnipath scheme is to reduce, or we've had to reduce our training period almost close to about 6-7 months presently, and that would mean that you have to bring in new methods, new technology in terms of our training curriculum. And simulators, I would say, is a good example. So simulators for our firing of small arms, simulator for driving, simulator for operating other systems, etc. So this is something which I feel there is good potential. And again, here I'm glad that there are a lot of companies who are stepping forward and they're coming up with tailor-made solutions to meet our requirements.
That's good to know, and this is the forum there where we speak about all that. But let me turn to some internal situation, internal in the sense situation in Jammu and Kashmir and our approach to management of the line of control with Pakistan. What is the current status? Is Jammu and Kashmir now in a state of peace that is partly disturbed by sporadic incidents? And do you still think that Pakistan is still pushing terrorists and is maintaining infrastructure for them to be pushed in from the other side into Jammu and Kashmir? What is the status currently?
Right. So let me start by saying that the situation in the Jammu and Kashmir is, I would say, well under control. And I think post the abrogation of Article 370 and the kind of whole of the nation approach that we adopted has resulted in a number of positives. A, I would say the violence levels have come down significantly. B, in the hinterland itself, you would have noticed the protests or incidents of stone pelting have again reduced. As far as the infiltration on the line of control itself is concerned, it has come down. But then there is the issue of the focus having shifted to our southern areas of the plains. And the narco-terrorism nexus is something that is now coming up to the fore, wherein some of the youth are now getting radicalized, getting motivated just to pick up odd weapons like a pistol and a grenade. So the focus now, I would say, from the other side is to give this insurgency or this movement an indigenous hue by making it appear as if it's a locally grown movement. And that is something which we are currently
watching.
Yes. And this has resulted in some more visible incidents happening wherein some of these people are targeting minorities. Some of them are targeting people who have come from outside Jammu and Kashmir to earn a living. So that has been one area of concern as far as. However, it is surprising that there is no let-up in the number of terrorists that you find either in the training camps or the launch pads. But within the valley itself, I would say things are
Under
looking
control
good,
there.
under control, and as we move forward, I think it is only good that the development takes place, and I see good prospects for normalcy to return and people learning, starting living a good life there.
In Jammu and Kashmir, that's true. Let me sort of talk about what lessons. I'm sure the Indian Army is watching the war in Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war. What lessons do you see, broad lessons from that conflict?
Right. And there are some very important lessons, but we'll be naive to just sort of replicate them and adapt, but we'll have
use
to
the same template,
analyze
yeah.
them in our own context.
Right.
And the first and the foremost is this hypothesis that wars in the future will either not take place, and for a number of reasons, no two nations will go to war in a classical or a conventional manner.
Right.
I think this hypothesis has been proven wrong. There was the second issue. We also talked that wars in the future will be short, swift, and swift. But that again, you are almost in the seventh month now,
yes.
and there is no let up, or things don't seem to be moving towards any resolution.
Right.
So that is the second. Third is the relevance of combat platforms in terms of tanks, the artillery, the long range precision strike, and the rest. Whilst you have countermeasures to them, you had drones and other systems which were countering these heavier platforms. But the relevance of heavier platforms, I would say, would still remain. Fifth, it also brought about certain dimension that is a non-kinetic or the non-contact dimension of warfare,
Right.
be it cyber, be it information operations. So that is something, again, some very useful lessons came about. And lastly, and most importantly, I think Mr. Kalyani mentioned about the aspect of being self-reliant,
Absolutely.
the global effect on supply chains. I think it brought out loud and clear that we need to be self-reliant in being able to not only produce our own equipment systems, but also able to sustain them.
That's true. So one final question. You've now about 6 months into your tenure as the chief of the army. And you've taken over at a time of turmoil, the flux that is there globally. Going forward, apart from the challenge that we have just mentioned, China challenge, there is the Pakistan challenge. Is there a kind of plan, or is there a thought process in the Indian Army to modernize the army little more swiftly in terms of induction of new technology, in terms of induction of future technology? What is the roadmap there? And that's my final question to you.
So to put it very in a broader context, we are moving from I would say a manpower intensive army to a more modern technological driven, Atmanirbhar, and a more agile, future ready fighting force, so that you are able to meet the challenges across the entire spectrum of conflict
Right.
in the future. And modernization has been one of the important pillars. And when you talk of modernization, there are 5-6 areas that we are distinctly looking at.
Right.
First is, of course, the lethality, wherein be it the artillery system, be it your tank, how do you go in for more precision strike in terms of accuracy, ranges, as well as the volume of fire.
Right.
So that is one. Secondly, the protection and the mobility. And that is where our upgrading of our tank fleet and our other infantry personal carrier fleet is something again we are looking at. Third is in terms of ISR again, and that is where our drones as well as the counter drone technology is what we are focusing on. Fourth is for an infantry soldier itself.
Yeah.
How do you empower him? And that is where you're looking at a integrated system where he has better protection, he's got better situational awareness, he's able to communicate better as part of a squad or a platoon, he's got a better individual weapon, and the likes. So that is one of the key areas where you want to focus on the infantry soldier itself.
Right.
And then there are other developments in terms of software defined radios in the communication field, as well as in the aviation you're looking at light combat helicopters, more potent platforms,
Right.
and the munitions. You're looking at loiter munitions. Some of these areas is what we are focusing on in terms of modernization. And again, Atmanirbharta is one major, I would say, component of our modernization efforts. And my colleague in the previous session, I suppose he would have adequately highlighted,
He did.
giving facts and figures as
Yes.
to what is what has
is
been the
the
outcome
stress
of,
that you are
absolutely,
putting on. Yeah,
yes.
that's true, absolutely. And I think this conversation is like an icing on the cake, because throughout the day we spoke about Atmanirbharta, self-reliance, collaboration, cooperation between nations. And I think you've given a great insight into what the thinking in the Indian Army is, and under your leadership, what's the roadmap is. Thank you very much for your time and this conversation, General Pande. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Nitin.
Thank you very much.